You ever wondered why breaking your bad habits is so damn hard? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you a simple four-step process that will help you break pretty much any bad habit in a matter of one day. Now, the thing about habits is we have to understand what habits are, how the brain processes habits, what habits are, what they're to do for you. And then you have to understand that actually how to interact with the brain, how to dialogue with the brain to break the bad habit. So, question for you. Which bad habit, and I know you've got some kind of bad habit or you wouldn't be watching this video. What kind of bad habit do you want to break? Maybe it's eating too much chocolate, too much sugar. Maybe there's a part of you that's wanting to go back for seconds when you're eating. Now, what I want to share with you can work for pretty much any habit. I've done this for a lot of years now, and I use this very same process on myself. It'll work for pretty much any habit. However, this is not for breaking drug addiction habits and things of that nature. Does the same process come into play? Absolutely. But here's the thing, those are much more brain-based ingrained and perhaps require some professional attention. What I'm talking about here was something that I stumbled on many years ago, and I used it to break a habit of drinking Diet Coke. Many years ago, I used to drink literally about, I don't know, one Diet Coke per day. And I drink a lot of Diet Coke, and I read somewhere that Diet Coke is not good for you. Actually, it's really bad for you. But the thing was this, I was almost air quote addicted to drinking Diet Coke. No matter what, I'm not a coffee drinker, so every day after lunch, I would say, okay, my afternoon's rolling around. I'm going to be a little groggy maybe. I just had lunch. Get a Diet Coke for the caffeine. And that was my reasoning for wanting to drink the Diet Coke every day. But when I decided to stop, it was really hard for me to stop. I'm sure you can actually, fill in the blank with your own things. Maybe again, it's Coke, Diet Coke, soda, maybe it's sweets. It's different things for different people, obviously. I know people that have used this very same process. I've taught it to them for both drinking alcohol and also for smoking. Now, will it work 100% for something more significant like alcohol and smoking? Well, that's entirely up to you, but I have seen this work for people, okay? And pretty much and from every walk of life. All right, the first thing we have to do is break down and understand your habits. First things first, very powerful phrase. We don't get what we want in life. We all want many things, better health, more money, relationships, whatever it might be. We don't get what we want. What we get is our habits. Because see, what your habits are is what you do automatically. Your habits drive you. The Buddha once said, first we create our habits and then our habits create us. So what we do is we create through repetition, which we'll talk about in just a minute. We create the habit. And then what happens is we actually create the habit, which then becomes a brain-based process. And then the habit happens automatically. So as the Buddha said, first we create the habit, meaning first we start drinking Diet Coke or smoking or eating a lot of sugar, whatever it might be. Then we do it with repetition. And then what happens is it becomes a habit. It becomes neural pathways in the brain. And then we do it automatically. And then it's hard for us to break that particular habit. Okay, so just a bit ago, I said that habits are neural pathways in the brain. Everything that you do creates a synaptic response in the brain, processes in the brain. And let's say that you have the habit of getting up at 7 a.m. every morning. You can pick any habit you want. 6 a.m., I don't care. But you have a habit of it. So when you do it the first time, it's not a habit. But then you do it again. So you've got this neural pathway in the brain, these synaptic responses. You do it the first time. There's no really synaptic highway, meaning like a trench in the brain, okay? A path in the brain. And then you do it again, and the brain actually does the same synapses. And then you actually dig that trench, that pathway a little deeper. And you do it again, and you dig it even deeper. You do it again, and you dig it even deeper. I think you get the point. So when we do things over and over and over again, we are creating neural pathways in the brain. These neural pathways are quite literally our habits. Then what happens is they actually start functioning on autopilot. They happen automatically, which basically they're a habit. So what's important for you to recognize is that you have to retrain your brain, but you have to retrain it in a way with behaviorally with the new habits that you want to create. But the challenge you're having right now, you might be thinking is, well, I want to work out and I want to get in the habit of that, or I want to eat healthy, or I want to start meeting more people, whatever it is. But we are already in the bad habit of doing it the old way, meaning eating the Cheetos and the Doritos and the Ho-Hos and the Ding Dongs and the junk food and ordering, extra servings or drinking Diet Coke or whatever it might be. So then these bad habits, because they happen on autopilot, they sabotage our desire to create the new habits. So the anatomy of a habit, and notice that I just said the bad habit will sabotage these new desired good habits. First, I want to point out there is no such thing as a bad habit. Now, you could be smoking and you could say, well, that's a bad habit. No, that is a habit. A habit is simply a habit. That is it. The part of your brain that creates the habits doesn't think analytically. See, you thinking that it's a bad habit is your prefrontal cortex, the executive part of your brain, the thinking part of your brain. So when you're doing a habit, the brain just does what it does. But the executive part of the brain, the thinking part of the brain, the analytical part of the brain goes, no, that's bad for you. You should not do that. Now, all habits, there's a part of the brain that works from the foundation that all habits are for survival, meaning every habit we have is for our survival in some way, which is one of the reasons it's really hard to break your habits because there's a part of the brain that operates from whatever you do, it's necessary for you to survive. Now, analytically, you might think, well, it's not necessary for me to, survive to keep smoking, but you're in the habit. So the brain just does what it does. Let me point out what I mean by that. Let's say that you take your cell phone and you set your alarm for 6 p.m. Let's do 6 a.m. every morning. You set your alarm for 6 a.m. When the alarm goes off in the morning, you might not want to get up, but are you yelling at your alarm clock, calling it bad names, cussing at it, saying, well, what the hell is wrong with you? Why? Why are you waking me up? I can't believe you woke me up. No, not at all. The phone, that alarm is just doing what it was programmed to do. That's the end of it. Your brain just does what it is programmed to do. What your brain is programmed to do is your habits, the neural pathways that have been created. Your brain is just programmed to do that. Now, a bit ago, I said that there's a part of your brain that works from the premise that all of your habits are necessary for survival. This being said, and I'm guessing a lot of you haven't heard what I'm going to say and the way I'm going to say it. There's a part of your brain that works from, all of your habits are meant for your survival. Now, that being said, what I'm going to say next, you probably haven't heard before. So what happens is, because whatever habits you have, part of the brain works from, those are necessary for your survival. So what the brain does is it gives you urges to do the habit. Why? If you could get inside your brain and hear the dialogue, the brain is saying, let's take smoking. Let's say you're in the habit of smoking, and the brain literally works from the premise, smoking is necessary for your survival. So then what happens, because the brain works from that premise, smoking is necessary for your survival, what the brain does is says, okay, if you forget to smoke, I'm going to give you a craving. The craving is like a wake-up call. The craving is the reminder to smoke. So then what happens is you might get busy, whatever it might be. You might forget to smoke, but then the brain gives you the craving that reminds you to smoke. Why? The brain, part of the brain, not all of it, part of the brain wants you to smoke. Why? Because that part of the brain, the reptilian oldest part of the brain, is responsible for your survival. That part of the brain wants you to stay alive. That part of the brain is a survival mechanism. So that part of the brain's going to say, hey, 5-star alarm, craving, 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 smoke the cigarette. Smoke the cigarette. Why? Because it's good for your survival. So then what happens? I find this pretty, humorous with smokers. Many times people will say, well, smoking calms me down. No, it doesn't. What it does is the person has the craving to smoke and they're a bit anxious and they're a bit tense. So then, because the brain's giving them the cue for the craving. So then they have the craving and the urge to smoke. So then what they do is they're like, okay, I'm going to light up this cigarette and I'm going to smoke. Now what happens? Guess what? They calm down because they had the cigarette. So it's not the cigarette per se that calms people down. It's whatever is associated with smoking, the brain's going to do habitually, and the brain's going to give you the urge to do it. Now, if you don't respond to the urge, the brain's going to give you a bigger, I was like beating on a pan metaphorically a couple of minutes ago, a bigger like whack on the head. Time to smoke, time to smoke. And if you don't smoke, the brain gets louder. Time to smoke, time to smoke. The brain's wanting you to smoke. Why? For survival. So, what I want to point out based upon what I just said, stop personalizing your habits, which is what a lot of people do. Now, what I mean by that, before we go into the process, I want to share with you personalizing your habit. See, the phone just does what it does what it's programmed to do. So, if I wanted to personalize this, I could say, you are a horrible iPhone. You are a mean iPhone. You are a vindictive iPhone. I hate you, iPhone. I'm personalizing my emotions to what the phone is doing, but the phone is just doing what it's programmed to do. So, what many of us do is we personalize our habits. Let's say we are in the habit of eating too much sugar. So, then what we do is we personalize the habit and we say, I just don't have any willpower. I'm really a lazy person. I'm not very strong. I don't have the willpower. I'm not this. I'm not that. It's really hard for me to break my habits when I have whatever XYZ habits. And then many people personalize their habits in a very negative way. People will say things like, I'm so lazy. I'm such a loser. It's really easy for me to quit things. I can't stick to anything. Do you notice how we're analyzing left brain and then we're personalizing it? We're rationalizing it, but we're also personalizing it. It's not about you. Your habits are not about you and your characteristics and your worth and your value. Your habits are simply processes of the brain that do what they're programmed to do. Now, how are they programmed to do? Well, what I said earlier, through repetition. So, what we're going to do is that the brain learns through repetition. So, what we're going to do is we're going to use repetition to recondition the brain out of the habit. So, I want to give you a 4-step process that literally I did not read it in the book. I just stumbled upon it many years ago when I was wanting to stop Diet Coke. And I just stumbled on it. I use this very simple 4-step process, and I literally quit Diet Coke in 24 hours. No cravings, no desires. Now, I know other people that have used this very same process for smoking. Now, when I said drinking earlier, if you're drinking a fifth of Jack Daniels every day, you probably need something stronger than this process. But then again, if you're committed to this process, it may very well work for you. I'm not dispensing medical advice or mental health advice. I'm just telling you this process is a very powerful, very simple process that anyone can use. We've got to walk through a couple of steps. So here's what I want to share with you. Step number one is to recognize the habit. So let me walk you through my process when this happened to me. So what I would do is when I was drinking the Diet Coke, and I swear I don't know what they put in it, but there, to me, if I had to bet money, I'd say there's something addictive in that can of Coke, can of Diet Coke, because I had the urge, and it could just be the habit, but I had the urge to have a Diet Coke every day. So what I would do is when I'd go to lunch, many of us work at home. I would literally go out for lunch just to get out of the house to go do something. And as I was driving back home, I didn't keep any Diet Coke in the house because I knew I'd drink it. So I would stop at the 7-Eleven about a block from my house and I'd grab a 16-ounce Diet Coke. Now, one day when I'm driving back home, 5-star alarm going off, that noise again, that craving. Diet Coke, Diet Coke, Diet Coke, Diet Coke, Diet Coke. Here's where most people cave in right there. But what I did is this, and this is your process. And you can even write this out and dialogue with yourself. Wait, this is not me. It's just my brain. That's step number one. Dialogue. Say it all out. It's not me. It's just my brain. When we do that, we are now disassociating from the habit. Because when we are associated into the habit, it's much harder to break. Meaning, I am addicted to Diet Coke or I am addicted to chocolate. No, let's break that association. It is not me. This is my brain. And you can say whatever you want, but you have to understand that first step. Say it any way you want, but I do recommend you say, this is not me. This is my brain, or this is not me. And this is a part of my brain trying to drive me into the habit. Now that we have so-called named it and we've disassociated, now it's going to be very easy to start breaking that habit. Then what I would say next is, this is not me. It's just my brain trying to drive me into my old behaviors, which I now release. So say it just like that. And you can write this down and memorize it. This is not me. It is my brain trying to drive me into old behaviors and habits. I now choose to let this go. Step number three. I'm going to explain the distinction here. This is a really important step. You have to dismiss the habit completely. Now, what I mean by that, do not misunderstand ignoring and dismissing. So ignoring could be, let's say that you have kids and your kids are nagging at you for buying them candy, taking them somewhere, or whatever. Ignoring is maybe dialogue with them a little bit, saying, no, we're not going to do that. I'll do it later. I told you guys already, we're not going to do that, or however you dialogue, but you get the point, okay? So many of us dialogue a little bit with the distraction, the habit. No. I grew up a small town Texas farm boy, and I'm 60 years old. And when my parents said something, when they said no, that was the end of it. I didn't talk back. I didn't argue. No means no. Now notice what happened here. Even when they said no, I was dismissed. It's kind of like that phrase, talk to the hand. Doesn't matter what you say. It just does not matter what you say. I'll say it again. It does not matter what you say. Nothing is going to change, period. So when you try to dialogue with the habit and ignore it, it just gets louder. So when we dismiss it, metaphorically and even physically, metaphorically means you just turn your back on it. But physically could mean that you literally just no means no. So the way that I dismissed it is when I was driving home. So I had the urge saying, pull into the 7-Eleven and get the Diet Coke. And then I went through that dialogue that I told you about. And then I dismissed the self-talk. I call it the habit voice. I dismissed the habit talk, the habit voice, by just continuing, because I would take a left to go to 7-Eleven. Nope, not happening. And I drove home another block away, pulled into my neighborhood, went in the house. I'm home. I'm not going back out to get a Diet Coke at that point. So notice what I did. I pretty much overrode the habit, the desire, and the cue all through dialoguing with the habit. Now, the final step is moving your attention. What that means is move your attention to something completely different. Why? Your attention is what you're thinking, and you cannot think. It's called dual task interference. You cannot think two things simultaneously. So, for example, right now, if you're listening and you're still watching at this point, you're listening to me. What you're not thinking about, and you might even be taking notes and everything else, what you're not thinking about is a lobster dinner. Why? Because your attention is right here. So when you dismiss it, talk to the hand, you dismiss it, meaning we're done. We're not dialogue. We're done. And turn your back. And when you dismiss it, what happens pretty quickly, and I would say this is going to happen within 24 hours, maybe even the same day. What happens, this part of the brain that gives you the habit, the the primal reptilian part of the brain, if you could hear the dialogue, it'll start saying in the dialogue, this part of the brain will say, well, every time I actually give them the urge, they shoot it down. He ignores it. She ignores it. So I'm not going to give her the urge anymore. Why? Because when I give her the urge, she literally will ignore the urge. So when you identify it, meaning you can feel the craving, you can hear the self-talk, you can hear the habit voice, you dialogue with it and say, this is not me. This is simply part of my brain. This is my habit voice. And then what you do is you dismiss it, meaning you turn your back on it. Like I drove home, you can get up, you can go to the gym, you can go to the kitchen, you can pick up your phone and look at something to pull your attention away from that. And then what you do is, well, that's moving your attention. Then what you do is go about your activity, forgetting about everything you just did. You do this, I guarantee you. I said repetition a couple of times earlier. You do this with repetition, and you will start retraining your brain to literally drop the old habits and the old behaviors very, very quickly and very easily. No willpower. There's no willpower whatsoever needed. And by the way, willpower does not work. It's simply working with your brain and the way that your brain was designed to work. Speaking of work, if you'd like to work with me personally and engage with me personally, then what you may want to do is go over to my app, jimfortin.com/insiders. Join my insiders group where I do live coaching calls twice per week, and we have monthly themes, transformational themes each and every week. In the app, you can dialogue with me personally, and I can coach you on all of these tips and techniques that I'm bringing to you. Again, jimfortin.com/insiders. If you like this video and you want more tips like this, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you over on another video. Bye-bye.